Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. So today I'm delighted to be joined by Mike Trupiano, a fellow adoptee and also a fellow podcaster. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Hi, Simon.
Yeah, so Mike's in Berlin, which is spooky because I interviewed somebody else from Berlin last week. But Mike's originally from the States. So when did you land in Berlin? When did you first hit Berlin, Mike?
I've been here since early January 2012.
2012. Okay, yeah. So I 2012. When did I go? I was last there just a couple of years ago, just before lockdown. But before that, I hadn't been back. I was there for 3 months back in '86, working in a coffee factory to supposedly finance me learning German. So. But we've seen some big changes since then because obviously I was there before the wall came down. So,
yeah.
So
more coffee available now.
Yeah. So, why did you start the podcast, Mike?
I started Secret Son because I was frustrated being a secret. I found inadvertently. I found siblings I found a half-sister via Ancestry.com, and she was very welcoming, apparently because I'm a twin for our father. We share a father, not a mother. She was reluctant to introduce me to anyone, and she slowly, she introduced me to our brother. And I had to kind of pressure her and them to let me talk to my uncle, my dad's only brother, which I've done. I've never met him. I've talked to him and his wife once on the phone for a couple hours. But I'm still a secret to the rest of the family, cousins, etc. And I find that very frustrating. I found it very frustrating in the past, and I just tried to block it out of my mind. I thought, how can I keep from spiraling down in rage about this? And I thought, well, maybe if I talk to other adoptees about secrecy, that would help me. And I think it has. I don't think about connecting with my cousins so much anymore.
Yeah.
It's not such a burning desire.
Yeah. So how has the podcast shaped things for you then?
How has it changed them?
How has it changed life for you? What have you learned from it? How's it shaped you? How's it changed things for you?
I often find it challenging to do the show, I realize, because I realize when I hear people's stories, I think, oh man, do I even want to talk about adoption? Because now I'm thinking about my story and then the secrecy I'm in. And, the adoptive family who was very rough. But it gets good. The show gets good feedback. People say it's a good service. And I think in the long run, I'm stronger for it. But I realize definitely with editing, because editing takes many hours, and hearing the story over and over, it does knock me down a little bit, I realize,
So it's
for
kind of
a few days or a week, and I'm back in the kind of the powerlessness of being the adopted kid.
Yeah. So it kind of re-traumatizes you then.
I hope not, but sometimes I think that's what it feels
yeah.
like. And often when I'm done editing an episode, I think, that's it. That's the last episode. I can't do it again.
Yeah.
But then I seem to feel stronger after that, after about a week.
Yeah. You bounce back higher, yeah. How do you feel when you're actually doing the podcast itself? Is that okay? Is it just the editing that causes you the challenge?
No, I think doing the show was good. And
Yeah.
I think if I could afford a full-time editor, things would be a lot more smooth.
Yeah. Yeah. So I come from the publishing world, and publishing stuff in print, and it's a very laborious process, like creating a brief, instructing a writer, checking what the writer's written against the brief, checking it matches, editing it, proofreading it, get the client's approval, do those amendments. It's like it kind of goes on forever. In the podcast world, once when I decided I was doing a podcast, I just thought I'm not going to do any editing at all, not one little jot, because I can either do it, I can only do it either, you know, to the nth degree, or none at all. And so I find incredible freedom. I just let it go out into the world with the ums and ahs. Occasionally I have to get somebody to edit a word out for me, or a sentence, like somebody reveals something that they don't want else to know. I'll pay somebody to take a chunk of text out, but I do it free. So I'm not doing, one of my reasons for not wanting to do the podcast, when I was encouraged to do so by a marketing mentor of mine, was the actual time that it would actually involve the technical stuff and all the editing and adding the music on and stuff like that. So I just let it go out into the world, as is. So interesting. Everybody's got a different approach, and I think we got to do what's right for us, in everything we do, especially obviously the podcast stuff. So,
well, I think we've definitely. Well, I know my wife does the tweaking editing at the end. She's a musician, and she'll do whatever she does after I record the intro and the outro.
Yeah.
And I've definitely cut back a lot on my own editing.
Yeah. Cool.
There can be some ums and ahs, and I guess silences, big stretches of silences, are something that I take time to cut out.
Yeah, for sure. So what have you what have you learned do you compare your experience to the other people that come on the show? I mean, is that a thing for you? What have you learned from the other people that you've interviewed? Because you've done some interviews as well as the one-handers, just sharing your story.
What have I learned from the people I've interviewed?
Yeah.
I think I sometimes feel myself, I mean, I guess I tend to be an envious person, which is not a good trait. But I often envy people who have these large extended families they found, and they're all connected, and they have big reunions. That can really trigger my poor me attitude, and it's a real challenge to have had such a rough adoptive family, and just brutal in every respect, verbally, physically, whatever, psychologically. Sometimes I feel like, boy, I need one of those big reunions. I need something like that to offset this family, but I don't have it. I'm a secret from most of my family. Granted, they are in the middle of America. I'm in the middle of Europe, but I don't know. A family Zoom call would be nice, Yeah. So for me, doing the podcast is, maybe it's just growth. I don't know. Like, growth is painful. I'm dealing with stuff. I wanted to do the show once a week, and I realized, due to time constraints, that's not possible for me or us. And I don't even know if psychologically it could be. I think I need recuperation time.
Yeah.
After I get an episode out, I can't even look at the show for a week.
Wow. Wow.
Sometimes I think this is bizarre.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it takes us back, doesn't it? I guess. Um, I haven't had so I'm the other way around in terms of I didn't have that brutal time. I had a gentle upbringing, but on the other side, I've had very little in terms of, well, in terms of reunion. What have I had? I've had um, a letter and a Christmas card from an uncle, and a couple of more Christmas cards from him, and a conversation with a half cousin on New Year's Day this year.
Mm,
So some interesting contrasts there between
yeah.
us. Um,
Well, for me, every little bit has helped solidify my identity. Learning my dad's name, seeing photos of him, meeting siblings, my nephews. I have 4 nephews. Only 2 of them know who I am. The other 2 have been told that I'm just like a long lost family friend.
yeah, wow.
Uh,
So the line continues. Yeah,
yeah.
that's a bummer.
I don't know. I guess this is the karma that we and that I have to wrestle with. And this is my particular challenge and it's fine. It just takes a lot of work,
Yeah,
you know, the dealing with the adoptive family and then, having no roots. And then, I think, the older I get and finally having some genetic mirroring, I realize, my God, life would have been so much easier to have had some genetic mirroring at a younger age.
so you talked about solidifying identity. What does that mean to you, Mike?
I have a better idea what I should look like physically, that it's okay to look how I look, you know, be it my eyes sort of half closed or half open. Um, it's weird. I was raised by 2 people who I were relatively artistic, but did not pursue it professionally. So I have this in me that this push pull of the arts life is the way to live, yet I did not see that modeled. And I hear of adoptees finding out, not being raised with artists, and then they finding out, oh, in their birth families, there were a lot of artists. I have the exact opposite experience. So raised by people who were somewhat artistic, and probably could have pursued it professionally, but didn't. And then the family I found, there's no artists, it seems. And it's all kind of lawyery and analytical. And so trust me, every detail I've learned about my true heritage is invaluable to me. But so trying to incorporate, the nurture with the nature, I think is my challenge right now. So maybe the middle point is just doing a podcast and, talking about all this.
Because you said that makes you stronger. You've got to feel that. You've got to
I
feel.
think it does. I think it does in the long run. It does feel like taking medicine sometimes. I am super interested in everyone's stories. Sometimes it does feel, I hate to say it, it does feel a little re-traumatizing.
Yeah.
And I never thought I would say that. And I think I've been thinking I need to do something with the show to make it less traumatizing.
Yeah.
Be it focusing exclusively on recovery, you know? How does one make it through not having genetic mirroring, uh, irrespective of whether the adoptive family is
Yeah.
healthy or not. I know, just seeing photos of my dad I was almost 51 when I finally saw that, just changed everything. That was 5 years ago.
Yeah. So we're the same age, right? I I've never seen a photo of him, my biological father. I've seen photos of. Well, I have. No, I have. That's not true. I saw kind of some sort of blurry shot, picture taken on a smartphone and uploaded to WhatsApp by this half cousin, and I spoke to on January 1st this year. I've seen pictures of my birth mum. Her brother, my uncle, sent a few from Canada, where he lives. I'm just thinking in terms of this. Well, what you've talked about identity from a couple of levels here in terms of what you look like, and the genetic mirroring, and also the inclination, shall we say, or profession, because you make a living as a comedian and you do a lot of work helping people with their stories, if I remember rightly.
Okay. Yeah, various types of acting, voice or commercials or whatever. Is there a deeper sense of, do you see a deeper sense of identity beyond what we do for a living and what we look like? Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to get there. I do. This is a real issue for me. I don't know why I have it, but I am very much identified. My worth is identified with what I do. And if I'm unclear about where I'm going with it, I just feel less than.
Yeah.
I mean, I ended up majoring in philosophy in school, so I have thought about these issues from a young age. What is our true self beyond these roles we have to play?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's ironic, Mike, because I've struggled with that stuff, the business stuff, should we say, far more than I've struggled with adoption. So my adoption struggles, I would say, are acute and short-lived, like some really, really intense moments, a few very intense and painful moments of fear and anger, and for probably 20, 40 seconds. But my being good enough at business, I would say I've struggled with that since probably 95, maybe.
Struggled with what about business?
Well, my whole my whole identity was wrapped up in business. So the business had my dad's name on it. So it's called MBA Publishing, and now since I sold that business in 2011 because it just it got too much. It got too much for me. I couldn't bear the way that it screwed me up. So the sleepless nights, the worrying, the feeling that I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't as good a salesperson as my dad is, a good enough entrepreneur as my dad, and that whole shebang. So the emotional roller coaster tied in with the financial roller coaster. When I finally got it, when I finally got the business, when I finally had a good year in the business after running it for like, what should I say, 10, 12 years, that didn't do anything for me. it was like a hollow victory. It was like, so what? And and having one good year didn't stop me worrying about the future.
Mm.
And that then was around the time about finding that the teddy bear was from my birth mother. So I thought, well, maybe adoption screwed me up, despite having a walk in the park of a life as a kid compared to you. And business success not having me brought me any happiness.
Yep.
So
I've heard of that.
sorry,
That's a common theme.
it's a common theme. But I've been around a lot of. I've got a lot of mates who own their own business or run the family business who aren't adopted, and they have exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
So, no doubt a shrink would join those two things, right? Not good enough for business. Well, the common factor is, Simon, it's not good enough, so it must be due to your adoption. Well, I've spent a lot of time doing a lot of soul searching on that, and I don't believe that's true. My belief is that's not true, because I've seen how much agony there is in a lack of, the business is an extension of ourselves. So, so now I run Simon Ben Limited, so it's even more closely, it's even more closely aligned. And I've spent the last 11 years trying to make a living out of making a difference, and I haven't managed to do it. The only thing that I've managed to do is to stop doing that. I get speaking gigs, but I get my money from other sources these days. I've got some rental property, and I've got a pension. So the only way for me the final nail in the coffin of my self-worth being being aligned with my performance in business has been to separate the two things completely. But I've spent a lot of time over the last 14 years separating that emotionally.
Yeah.
So, and the only way I've done that is through introspection, conversations with coaches, leading to like epiphany, my own epiphany moments. Right, that's the only way that's the only thing that's changed.
Yeah.
And as I say quite a lot, we can't have. There's no such thing as a second-hand epiphany. We have to have them for ourselves. We have to see them for ourselves. But for me, it's been, you are not your business. You are not your business. You are not your business. It's been getting the same, that same message. Your business, your business performance doesn't determine your worth. You are not your business. My wife's uncle ran a butcher's shop, and a butcher shop that his dad founded, started off, and he used to say, "I don't own my business owns me."
Yep.
And that is the way with so many small business owners. Our net worth determines our self-worth. Until we decouple it.
Yeah.
But it's not a once and done decoupling. It's like an infinite journey of depth, separation.
Yeah. I do think just speaking for myself, in terms of growing up and waking up every day thinking about family out there and feeling impotent around that. I think I learned that you can't do much about much in life. There's kind of a learned helplessness. And that combine that with like a kind of a rage against against authority in general. I think has definitely it definitely had a negative impact on me. And I guess some people, I don't know, I guess they're out there, adoptees who don't wonder. I mean, we see them. There are a few, big celebrities, but even some of them have searched. But pre-internet, searching, it just didn't seem possible. And it was also forbidden the way I grew up. So what does that mean? Knowledge, self-knowledge is forbidden. Uh, you should have guilt around even, wanting to have this knowledge. Yeah,
Yeah,
and like every family, there's a lot of lottery, where you end up. But I think that particular thing about I feel wasting so much time when it could have been spent on something else, you know, uh, and that something else could have had a better definition had I, you know, known, had genetic mirroring, known our family does this type of thing. So what's done is done, but you know, I'm living with the reality of, yeah, that would have been a lot, that would have been very helpful, to have been able to spend that time on something else. Uh, because I often feel like I don't have much time left, and I spend a lot of time doing what I feel like I should have been able to start life at the starting line,
yeah,
and not when at age 51 I see my dad's photo,
yeah.
you know.
Wow.
And I don't know if maybe someday I'll be evolved enough to say, oh, it's all good in the grand scheme, but right now I'm like, I see successful people, and that combination of not knowing your roots and then the adoptive family being crazy. I don't hear that from many from many people getting interviewed, you know, and it really enrages me. Uh and maybe it's fine. Maybe it's grist for the mill, and it just pushes me on. And so I'm constantly now just trying to reframe life. What I've been through is, well, this is just making me stronger. And you seem to be, people's praise my podcast, even though I wrestle with it. So maybe I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing right now.
Yeah. I heard you talking about like growing up thinking about thinking about your biological parents and that family. Um, I never I never did that. I never did that. So I I can't I can't put myself I can't see how that would have been. I have no lived experience of that. In terms of the stronger thing, I did learn something about that a while ago, because I thought that being stronger was like going to the gym. So I thought that what should we say, spiritual strength, the the strength of character or emotional strength or whatever. I thought that was developed like um, like going to the gym. So I remember thinking when the business performance was suffering, when the business performance wasn't great. When it first had a little bit of a downturn, I thought, oh well, I'm going to learn some stuff now. I'm going to learn some stuff, and I wouldn't have learned anything without the tough times. That's kind of what I thought. So now's the chance. Now that my dad's retired, it's all on my shoulder. I'm not just doing what he tells me to do. It's down to me and that sort of stuff. So I thought I was going to get stronger from that. And a few years later, I heard this thing from about a guy talking about an interview with Michelangelo about the statue David that is in Florence somewhere probably. And somebody said, how did you sculpt David? And Michelangelo said, David was always there. I just had to chip off the bits that weren't David. And this, in that moment, I saw this. I had a big shift where I saw that strength and resilience. People talk about resilience a lot. Strength and resilience are revealed; they're not built. But everybody in the personal development world has to make us feel weak and then tell us that they're strong, so that we will buy into them, and we, in the belief that we will get some strength, we'll strengthen our strength from paying them money or time. If you're watching a YouTube video, it's obviously free training like that. And that was quite a seminal moment for me. So that the idea that strength is revealed, not built.
Yeah. I have heard that quote by Michelangelo. Yeah.
And it strikes me that there's a difference between hearing the quote, getting the idea of the quote in our heads, and getting it in our hearts, or getting in our guts, like it's an embodied learning. So we've got this idea that understanding is a 1 or a 0. I understand it or I don't. But it's not like that. It's got infinite degrees. It's like speaking German, right? So, yeah,
we're in trouble.
You're in trouble. I remember being in a club in Berlin, and obviously the music's going, and I was chatting to somebody in German, and then I said I was English. Said, what you mean you're not? No, I'm not German, but my German's pretty rusty. But it goes to that fact that you kind of you're never done mastering a language, and you there's infinite depths to an epiphany, an understanding. And I joke about epiphanettes, right? They're like epiphanies, they're just small ones, right? So where do you see that? Where would you put yourself on that level of understanding stuff on the strength bit and the resilience? Would you say that's kind of intellectual, or is it in your head, your heart, or your gut? Where would you get it?
I guess I'm halfway there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know the concept, and some days, well, it's not that some days I believe it, it's that I have to remember that this is the concept.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, that distinction between me and my business my worth and the business's impact and the business's performance. I don't know whether I'm halfway down that or not. I think some days I'm a lot further down than that, but then I forget. So I think it's like a remembering and forgetting thing as well. I kind of get caught up in it.
I think I could easily go to an extreme and say, well, my money condition has nothing to do with who I am. And maybe I lived like that for a long time when I was really broke. But then, when at least for me, when I thought like that, then I was completely indifferent to money, So I guess the trick is to, just commit to your business, and then regardless of the results, you realize it's not you.
Yeah. How do you see the, I don't know, how do I frame this question? How do you see the adoption learning curve compared to the learning curve around that stuff that we've just been talking about?
For me, I think a good thing about me having my podcast is it is a reminder for me that adoption for most people can be challenging. Not that we're hopeless cases, but that, it has its own particular challenges. So for me, that's a good, because I can tend to, it's weird, if I'm too plugged into the adoptee world, it's not good. But then if I stay away, it's not that good either. So I need to check in every once in a while. And it reminds me that this stuff does have an effect. Varies from person to person, how deep or, how quickly one manages it or recovers from it. But I think that understanding for me right now is much deeper. And I think maybe that's from having my own show.
Yeah. See, the thing that's coming into my head as you're talking about is if we break it down for two white guys, right, that haven't got transracial being a transracial, we haven't got that, adding another complexity into the mix. We've got two things. We've got a relinquishment trauma and a trauma and an adoptive family trauma, right? So one is about losing our mothers, and the other bit is about how we were raised in the adoptive family. So we kind of splitting those two out is only for theoretical purposes only, right? But it strikes me that because the trauma in your adoptive family, because you had that and I had a lot less of it. My dad was sometimes a bit of an idiot, but sorry, Mum, if she's listening. At work, actually, fun enough, it was tricky. It was tricky at work. And I don't know quite where I'm going with this. Do you think that there's to me, right, my opinion is a lot of more of your mess, as you expressed it to me, comes from that SH1T in the adoptive family. You said, they were bonkers.
Well, of course, that's a big factor in life's difficulties. But I don't know. I was thinking about this, just growing up and being told, speaking for myself, don't think of, for example, regarding my birth mother, the lies were told, the gaslighting. Don't think about her. She didn't want you, whatever the lies are, and then being cut off from any knowledge, even if that were not threatening to the adoptive family, you're still cut off from that knowledge. So
Yeah,
I
I
don't
know.
know. That seems like in the middle somewhere. That's between relinquishment and that's distinct from the the adoptive family, at least my adoptive family.
Yeah, I can't like my heart goes out to you, mate. It sounds like a really, really frigging rough time, rough ride you had. And I've heard you on speaking about. Um, I've heard you speaking on other podcasts before we spoke last time, and it's just like he's had a really sh1t ride as mine. So like,
Well, I think it's no wonder I ended up study philosophy, because just growing up in the constant gaslighting and the lies, and then I'm just, I'm very into alternative media, because I think there's just so much propaganda from big media, since it's owned by big companies. You see a very limited perspective that benefits the powerful. Um, and yeah, Chomsky, whatever, media analysis. It's no wonder that's been an obsession of mine from a young age.
yeah. Did the philosophy stuff help you as a kid? Did studying help you as a kid?
I would say at the beginning, because it was Catholic, but there was also some Southern Baptist in my house. It was very fundamentalist. Satan was ever present, God's vision, God was constantly watching, very sin laden, repressed. And to discover what thank God for books, because I just stumbled across some things in a used bookstore. I stumbled across some magazines called the American Mercury, which are fascinating, edited by a guy named H.L. Mencken, and he was a big name dropper. And he dropped names I'd never heard of, like Nietzsche and Camus. And my 14, 15-year-old self was like, well, what is this? And I brought those books home and I shut my door, and they blew my mind. And that was fantastic. But I think I kind of thought my way to the end of the tether, and then I didn't know where to go with that. Um, so that was a very dark time. And I guess I'm trying to counter that now by not reading so much and really not pondering these huge questions, and just trying to stay in the day and stay practical.
Yeah, we've got to go with what feels right for us, right? I mean,
Yeah, I try to focus more on the body now, which is something I never did before. I just kind of, too much thinking at that age really, I mean, I was already dissociated, from growing up the way I did. And then reading Heidegger or Kant or whatever just kept me further in the ethereal.
yeah,
And I had no idea what to do. I thought, well, maybe I teach philosophy, but, you know, I am not an academic, you know. I'm whatever the opposite is, intuitive or emotion
yeah.
based.
And you wouldn't have liked the hierarchy in
Yeah, probably not.
academia either. I mean, I just think that's that whole way that system works. The the guy I listen to most of the time now, he hates to be even called he's a writer, and people call him a teacher, but he hates being called a teacher. He just says I'm a friend. He said, well, in the converse in a conversation with somebody else, sometimes I'm asking them questions and learning from them, and then we swap hats, and they ask me questions and they're learning from me. we're friends. We're not. When he hates being called a teacher. But that whole academic setup where you have to quote people. You've got to summarize what everybody else says, and then maybe at the end you can put your opinion in it. But that and the way that whole thing goes, the academic citations and the self-serving bibliographing, or and then you've got to do well to get into you've got to do well at high school to get into college. You've got to do well at college to get into do your masters. You've got to kowtow when if you're doing a masters research, masters, you have to do research that then the professor puts his name or her name to, publishes it. That whole self-serving, self-reinforcing system makes me want to puke.
Yeah, you have to publish, right? Or you perish.
You have to publish. It has to be peer reviewed and and it's all just one system. And it's in the UK, we're like you these days. We've copied you with the Americans with the grants, sorry, the loans, the student loans. So now you've got the universities are keeping on creating new things that are less and less academic, but appeal to more and more people, like sports management, right? So how do you learn to be you don't need to go to university to be a football manager, do you? I mean, it's just, anyway. Rant over, sorry, listeners.
I mean, one thing I have learned by doing the show is people tell me I ask good questions, I'm a good listener, and I have learned that by teaching also. People say my workshops are borderline like psychology sessions because we really get to the root of what is the story you're telling. Not often, but sometimes somebody brings in a story and we ask a few questions and it's like, well, actually the story's over here. This is a 2-minute thing you want to talk about, but the real story is over here. So this idea of identity being revealed, I can see that by me trying so many other things, and having those avenues closed to me. And so whatever the show or teaching, like my strengths being revealed.
Yes,
but I am very much a part of my culture and, middle of America and growing up at a certain age and in a kind of macho culture. Even my adoptive mother was macho. Like she would shame my adoptive father for being like, I don't know, girly, for the stupidest things like crossing his leg or something. So I'm very much almost,
wow,
very much I see, what I am and what my strengths are. I fight with them a little bit because I still think the way to be is to be like a hedge fund manager or like some ass kicker,
Yeah.
Not a empathetic, therapist or coach or, teacher. And I think that I have this delusion that had I known my roots a little better, the struggle would not be what it is. So, but that's an idea I have to let go of. And it's all intertwined, Maybe if I'd grown up with a solid idea of who I am, I would not be, maybe it's the struggle that's revealed the empathy. I don't know. At some point, growing up reading so much, often out of a sense of hiding, hiding from the violence in the house. I'm enjoying now not reading, I can see, I can tell when I'm reading to hide or reading to get something out of the book. And I'd say 80% of the time it's because I want to block out the world. But I have an awareness now. It's like, oh, you don't really want to read this, You just want to put a book in front of your face.
Yeah. Wow. I'm conscious of time. Is there anything else that I've not asked you about that you'd like to share with the listeners?
And another thing, I'm realizing the power of creativity right now, and I'm realizing just by creating anything is helpful for me. And I was a I won prizes as a kid for being a visual artist, and I lost that through the years, and I'm reclaiming that now, and that's very powerful.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
Why is it powerful?
Yeah. Or why is it powerful for you?
I don't know, maybe because it's not verbal, and I think the words, like people have said to me, "Oh, you should write a book. You have such a story," and I think, God, I do not want to write a book. I don't really, God bless people who write their memoirs. I don't really read them. You know, I've read a few. I don't know. I think then again, it's like I'm discovering my nature. It's like maybe I'm just not verbal, maybe I'm just, and I went the complete opposite direction out of self-preservation and went into my head. And maybe it's like I'm just a drawer and, I take Zumba
Yeah.
classes and I swim and I'm physical,
Yeah.
and that's okay.
Yeah. I've tried writing a book 3 times and got to 10, 12,000 words, and then realized I actually prefer talking to writing.
I know, me too.
And I prefer conversation to monologue. I prefer dialogue to monologue.
Yeah.
Um, and and I so that's what I'm doing. And it also means there's no barrier, right? Unless if you got a smartphone, you don't have to pay to listen to the podcast. Any and even if it's £1, it involves a decision. Um,
Yeah. Books are really venerated as the ultimate uh, intellectual achievement, I think. And more, I think, that's like it's very, I don't know if that is, but I'm always fighting against that of like, why do we think that this is oh, you wrote a book. Oh, okay. Now you're on a higher level. I don't know.
yeah.
Really?
Well, it's the author in authority, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the ego to a certain extent. It's the ego rub, isn't it? Or you're getting a nice feeling from somebody else. You've spent the time, you've generated your yeah.
I guess that's it. It seems as if you put in more time, you know. Whether you have or not, I don't know.
And it's very therapeutic, writing your getting the stuff out of your head and onto paper.
Yeah.
People talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I
no,
can't deal with
it's a
the isolation. I've realized I grew up too isolated.
you're up too isolated. Yeah, and the books took you there, so maybe that's why, as you said. Yeah. So, listeners, as always, check out the show notes. I've got a list to Mike's podcast there and his website. Find out more about what he does. And yeah, have you got anything you want to ask me, Mike?
I want to visit Northern England. I've never been there, so
Yeah,
can I drop by
you can,
when
and you
I'm
can
up there?
stay, my friend. Yeah.
Okay.
So, if will you be driving or on the train or what?
I don't know. I'd rather drive.
Yeah.
I love the movie The Trip, and I'd
All
like
right.
to
Yeah.
recreate
Steve
that.
Coogan. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're like there's the main the Leeds, sorry, the London to Edinburgh freeway. The A1 goes within like 2 miles of our house. So we're pretty
Oh,
easy.
nice.
We're pretty easy to find. We're halfway up the country. So 200 miles north of London, 200 miles
Nice.
south of Edinburgh.
Yeah, that's my next vision trip would be Scotland, Northern England, Ireland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll see you then.
Planning it out.
Thank you, listeners, and we'll speak to you again soon. Thanks a lot. Cheers. Bye bye.